Hey guys, welcome back. This is Mike from 60CLICKS, and today we're doing another watch review, this time for the Seiko Flightmaster chronograph. This is a pilot's chronograph, meaning that in addition to the standard chronograph counting features, you've also got this complex slide rule bezel. And the bezel allows you to do a lot of different mathematical conversions and things like that, mathematical calculations, but I'll talk about that in detail later. So it also has an alarm feature, which is unique to this particular chronograph under the 12-hour subdial that gives an audible beep similar to what you'd get from a digital Casio watch or something like that. The Flightmaster is an affordable quartz watch, and it's a great alternative to something like the Breitling Navitimer, which is an icon in this category, but for 30 times the price, you're getting a lot more value with the Seiko. Alright, so taking a bit of a closer look at the watch here, we've got a 42mm watch that wears a lot closer to 40mm, and the reason it wears smaller is because of the very short lugs. It's only about 44mm in height, lug-to-lug distance, and then the prominence of the bezel. The actual area of the dial is only 32mm, which makes it appear a bit smaller on the wrist, and it's also got a slightly domed crystal, which adds to the height, but overall it's a very wearable watch for most wrist sizes. If you're looking for something a bit larger in this price range and style, I would suggest checking out the Citizen Nighthawk Eco Drive. It's another watch that I've owned that wears a lot larger and has a lot of the same functionality. Now, the case here is actually quite basic. There aren't many interesting things done with the lines or shapes of the case, and most of the design interest here is in the dial. Now obviously this is a very busy dial. There's a lot going on here. And between the slide rule and the bezels, it can be a little overwhelming. However, once you get used to it, I think it's got a really nice tactical look. That's also quite functional if you know how to use it. Now, the dial itself is very interesting to look at. You've got the raised applied indices, some yellow highlights in the outer bezel and the chronograph seconds hand, and the sloped interior bezel as well. Combined with the slight dome on the crystal, you've got a dial that has a lot of depth. It's really interesting to look at from different angles. One of the unique features of the 411 is the presence of the alarm subdial. And one thing I love about this feature is that the subdial can also be used to track separate time zones without activating the alarm, which makes it a pretty good watch for traveling. And to set the alarm, you basically just pull the crown open and hold down the second pusher until the dial rotates into position. Once it goes off, it beeps for a minute or so, and you can silence it again by pressing one of the pusher buttons. The slide rule bezel here is obviously worth talking about. This is a rotary slide rule, which is an adaptation of the scientific slide rule that has been used by engineers and scientists for hundreds of years. And it's a feature that was used heavily by military and commercial pilots before the advent of computers, pre-1972, but it's more of a charming novelty at this point. I'm going to do a longer video on how to use a slide rule at some point, but basically it's a calculator that you operate by aligning the markers on the inner and outer bezels. With this you can calculate climbing rates, speed, ETA, fuel consumption rates, and converting between different units like gallons, liters, miles, and kilometers. It takes some practice to use properly, but it can actually be quite handy for everyday use. The lume on this watch is high quality. There just isn't a whole lot of it. The 8 markers on the dial are lumed, as well as the hands and the chronograph hand, and it glows quite strongly, as you can see, but it's just not as prominent as some of the Seiko dive watches like the SKX, but it's very good for a pilot's watch. I've currently got this watch on a NATO strap, but it comes with this nice stainless steel bracelet. It's got a typical Seiko dual action clasp with the quick release buttons, and the center of the bracelet is completely polished, which gives it a bit more of a dressy look. I usually prefer brushed surfaces for tool watches because I don't like the bling factor, but that's why I put this on a NATO. But keep in mind that this watch uses fat spring bars, and the lug spacing is quite small, so changing out NATO straps requires removing the spring bars completely, which is kind of a pain. So overall, I think this is a great value-priced chronograph from Seiko. If you're looking for the high-end version of this watch, then you should definitely aim for the Breitling. But for around $200, it's got a lot of great features, and the true 200-meter water resistance makes it a great everyday sports watch. So I hope you enjoyed my review. Please like and subscribe, and if you're a tool watch fan like me, please stop by my website at 60clicks.com for more.